Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello everybody, welcome to our Wednesday Leading Change episode this week with Chris Garvey. Hey Chris, welcome back.
Thanks Vasco, great to be here again.
So Wednesday is the change episode, of course, and that's something we are always working on. We were just talking about how change can be so different for two teams that have the same manager and the same coach yesterday. For those of you who haven't heard that episode, you definitely should go and listen to that. But now let's talk about a change process that you were involved with, where you were a change agent. And let's walk through the process, like what was happening, the steps that the process took, but also as you go through those steps, highlight for us the tools, the tips, the tricks, and the techniques you learned back then that you still apply today.
Yeah, for sure. I've had a few experiences where I've brought my tools and tricks and an agenda of this is how we should do the transformation, step 1, 2, 3, 4. And gotten burnt pretty badly, right? Because it come with a bit of a waterfall approach to something that's a complex problem that needs an empirical approach. And so, to be honest, whilst we've always got that tool bag that we can pull out from, I always keep it as simple as possible now. So I love two things: the spine model. So whenever I go into coaching environment, start with a contract, just get clear what's my role, what's your role, how do we meet, what's the agreement around that. But then first of all, I adore the spine model, which just has that at the top of it is what is the needs, what's the problem in this space that we are wanting to move the needle on, or shifts we want, like what's the business problems here? Because very often people say, Agile, let's bring Agile in, that's the buzzword. But you never go Agile for the sake of Agile. The goal isn't to be Agile. It's like if you go to gym, I hate the gym. You never go to gym to go to the gym. There's a purpose behind it. You go to gym to build muscle or get fit or lose weight, or that's the why behind it. And so for me, getting clear on that, why are we going Agile, is so clear, because change is so challenging. We know it. We prefer familiar. We default back to what's comfortable and what we know. And so shifting our ways of work and going on this mindset shift is challenging. So if we aren't clear on the why, what's the pain we're feeling now that we want to solve, or what's the vision we're moving towards, get that why really clear for both of us, document it, create an artifact of it, that this is the problems that we're trying to solve. At the top of that spine model, and then it goes the Agile values, principles, and then we get into the practices and tools down the bottom. And the brilliance of the spine model is it's about getting alignment of all of those to really get the value out of not just doing Agile, which is the practices and tools down the bottom, but aligning with that, the mindset shift, the behavior shifts, including with leadership and management. But all of that with the top thing in mind is what's your need? What
are some of the things that you think prevent us from understanding what you just talked about, right? Like start with the why, understand what are the enablers or constraints that are going to help us get to that why, and then talk about tools. Like why do we then get so often stuck in, and I'm going through a case right now that is exactly like that. Why do we so often get stuck in the minute details and aspects that we want others to adopt, right? And that's something for us as a coach it's already a big red flag when you want others to adopt something, right? Like why do we get stuck in that?
Yeah, good question. What comes up for me is, again, that we want to be safe, and a world that we can control, put in a box, apply a framework, go this, then this, then this, get some predictability. We prefer that. And that's for the complicated space if we're talking Cynefin. But the complex world you can't put in that box. You can't just be do your stand-ups, do your retro, do your agile, go for it. It's that sense and adapt and continuously evolving. That yes, a framework is good to kind of hold the space for, but I think and I find myself doing it. We are often going to, well, let's do a linear process to solve this. Let's get an expert in to tell us how to do it, and then we'll figure it out. But in complexity, you can't do that. But we don't like that because it highlights this unsafe world that we can never understand or nail it down because it's so volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. And I think that's scary. But also, and I mean, yeah, I'm also dealing with executives now where it's so rife, where they're like, Yana, go do the agile thing over there. Go do the agile thing over there. And
make the others change.
Yeah. And there's a few gems of leaders who understand that, who get it. I mean, there's one workshop I was in a few months ago where there was one exec, and he understood the content. He was like, oh, so you mean I have to change? And then he also got what that meant. Like, there's consequences to that landing in terms of how he needed to show up, his behaviors, and how it essentially takes control and power away to a large degree. And he was
so actually that becomes quite a challenge for us then as coaches and Scrum Masters, which is to help people understand what they need to change. Like, we can't tell them because we don't know, right? We're not in their heads. We don't know where they are.
Yeah.
We might even have a shared understanding of the why, but change is unique and individual in every person's situation. Even though we might all be aiming at the same why, everybody has a different role, a different set of responsibilities, and of course a different journey as well. So how do you do that, Chris? How do you help people understand that, hey, I need to change?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's actually quite. I'm in that challenge at the moment and trying to almost probe that question, but in not such a confronting way. But to say, in this shift in way of work, what behaviors in leadership or approaches might need a shift if we're going from here to here? So you're not saying you need to change, you're saying what changes might need to happen. And then, but it's also what I adore about professional coaching in the few spaces where you can genuinely go there and talk about, so you don't come from agile, let's shift this way of work. You come from, what are your problems? And then the conversation's rooted in that, and asking these powerful questions that then, and genuinely being with them with what emerges in those moments, not with the agenda. I mean, I really struggle with it. I'm coming with the agenda. I want us to be more agile rather than I want to solve your problem, and that being the emphasis. But when you have those moments where there's an aha, and I wish it happened more often than it does. I don't want to sound like it happens often, but that's where I love the pure coaching element of, again, that presence, being with them, and me also letting go of my agenda. And it's not to say that it always gets there, but there are, when you have those moments, we can't not eventually get to some issue that we realize is us. It's self-cooked. We are both the problem, but we're also the wizard in terms of. But it's exactly like you say. There's no formula. You can't bring it. Everyone's on their own journey, in their own space.
And we can only be there to help them find their own path. When you talk about leaders, the thing that comes to mind is that we don't know what these leaders are trying to achieve, right?
Yeah.
We observe some of the tools they use or practices or, methods of conversation, whatever, but we don't know what they are trying to achieve. And that's something that I also struggle with as a coach, which is to be able to help someone, even though I don't yet know what they are trying to achieve, and also be mindful that they might not know what they are trying to achieve, because I very often get stuck when it comes to change. For example, recently a case like that happened to me. I very often get stuck at the step of helping the client define the vision for success. And when you have a change that has no vision for success, of course, the first question I have in my mind is, what can I do? Like that, I don't know what success looks like.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, who would want the job of these execs? And that's where also I have so much empathy with these people who have such high pressure jobs, who are also, especially for those who can see the possibility of this new way of work and mindset, and then get back into the whirlwind of pressure delivery. And they're being the agent of change. I mean, it takes more backbone than I have. Certainly in that kind of big leadership role, in some of especially in these big organizations that have so much legacy, and
it can be a lot worse than what we see as coaches. But this was an episode filled with reflection, which is so important for us to adapt to the role of change agents. Thank you for sharing that, Chris.
Pleasure.
Leading change is one of the core skills we must acquire, but it is only one of the steps towards our success as Scrum Masters. Tomorrow, on Success Thursday, we will talk about how to define success for the Scrum Master role. We'll cover tips on how to measure your way to that position, and most importantly, how to develop that focus on continuous improvement that is as important for Scrum Masters as it is for teams. See you tomorrow. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.